February 18th, 2001, the day NASCAR changed forever. A moment that looked like a simple crash, yet behind it lived a truth buried for more than 2 decades. And now, at 67, Sterling Marlin is finally ready to speak. That afternoon, the track was shaking with noise, engines roaring, fans shouting, and the whole world watching. No one knew that in just a few seconds, everything would fall silent. Dale Earnhardt, a legend, a warrior on wheels, took his final lap, and from that moment on, nothing in NASCAR was ever the same again. But Sterling Marlin carried something from that day, a weight, a memory, a truth he never shared. What really happened in those last seconds? What has he carried inside him for more than 20 years? And why is he breaking his silence now? This isn't just a story about a crash. It's a story about guilt, unanswered questions, and the moment that changed 2 men forever. Stay with us till the end, because today, we uncover the truth. Sterling Marlin never spoke until now. The day that changed everything. It began like many other racing Sundays in Florida. Yet there was something different in the air. The morning sun sat high and bright, throwing long gold lines across the track. The air felt warm, heavy, and charged, almost as if the entire sky knew a great story was about to unfold. Fans poured into the stands wearing hats, shirts, and colors of their favorite drivers. Families held snacks, children waved flags, and grown men shouted with excitement. Daytona had always carried its own magic, but today, that magic felt stronger, louder, and almost mysterious. Nobody could explain it, but everyone sensed it. Dale Earnhardt Sr. arrived with the calm of a man who had been here many times. He walked through the pits with steady steps, nodding at crew members, shaking hands with fans, and giving small, confident smiles. Dale was more than a racer. He was a symbol, a force, and the heartbeat of NASCAR. They called him the Intimidator. Not just because of how he drove, but because of the way he carried himself, fearless, sharp, and tough as steel. When he sat in the driver's seat, engines seemed to listen. When he spoke, his team listened even closer. But on this day, Dale wasn't racing alone. He was guiding his team, his own son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and his close friend, Michael Waltrip. Michael had been chasing a dream for years. With over 460 races behind him and no major win, he wanted this victory more than anything. Dale knew that. He felt it, and like a captain facing strong winds, he wanted to clear the path so Michael could finally break through. The crowd buzzed louder as the cars began lining up. Cameras flashed, reporters spoke quickly into their microphones, and the roar of engines shook the grandstands. The air smelled like fuel, rubber, and wild hope. The flag waved in the wind, and fans lifted their phones to record the beginning of a race they thought would be remembered for victory, not tragedy. When the engines fired, the ground trembled. Cars shot forward, like arrows released from a single giant bow. The Daytona 500 had begun. Lap after lap, the tension grew. Cars slid forward, dropped back, and pushed their limits. Dale drove smoothly, almost effortlessly. But beneath that calm, there was something only a few close to him knew pain. Dale had been dealing with neck and arm discomfort that season. He called it nothing, brushing it away with a half smile. He didn't like worrying people, and he hated sounding weak. Still, the pain was real. He pushed through it because that was who he was. Tough, bold, unshakable. As the race neared its end, something special unfolded. Michael Waltrip was leading finally in a place he had dreamed of for years. Dale Jr. followed closely behind, And Dale Sr., instead of pushing forward for his own win, stayed behind both of them. He wasn't thinking about himself. He was protecting them, blocking the cars behind them, holding back the pack like a shield. This was classic Dale helping his team shine while he carried the weight. Meanwhile, Sterling Marlin, another strong and respected racer, was right there with them. He wasn't doing anything reckless or out of place. He was simply racing hard, fighting for position, just like every other driver on that final lap. Daytona was known for its speed and its tight battles. In the last moments of the race, every driver pushed themselves to the edge. Then came the final lap, the moment every fan waits for, the moment that decides everything. The crowd stood up. Spotters shouted instructions. Engines screamed. Drivers made desperate moves for one last chance at glory. And then, it happened. A small touch. So small, many didn't even notice it at first. Sterling's car came close to Dale's. The angle changed. The pressure shifted. In less than a second, Dale's black No. 3 car turned toward the wall at a sharp speed. Some fans gasped. Some cried out. Many didn't understand what they had just seen. To the eye, it didn't look like the kind of crash that usually stops hearts. NASCAR had seen flips, fire, flying parts, and drivers had walked away smiling. This one looked simple, quick, almost normal. So people assumed Dale would climb out too. Of course he would. He always did. But down on the track, where the noise faded into a strange, chilling silence, something felt wrong. Very wrong. Safety crews rushed toward the car. Their movements were fast, but their faces were tight with worry. Sterling Marlin, breath quick and heart pounding, slowed his car. He kept looking back, fear growing inside him. His hands trembled on the wheel. He knew. He felt it before anyone said a word. In those short moments, the Daytona 500 stopped being a race. It became a memory no one would ever escape, the moment that shattered the world of NASCAR forever. The crash everyone thought he would survive. From the stands, it looked like nothing more than a quick bump into the wall. Fans had seen far worse cars flipping through the air, sparks flying, huge piles of metal crashing together. Compared to those moments, this one seemed almost simple. Dale's black No. 3 car slid up the track, tapped the wall, and came to a stop. People watching thought he would open the door, raise a hand, and walk away just like he always had. That was the image fans carried of Dale Earnhardt. Strong, fearless, impossible to break. But experts later explained something far more frightening. In racing, it's not always the wild crashes that steal a life. Sometimes, it's the one that looks too normal. Sometimes, it's the sudden stop, the kind that crushes the body from the inside, while everything on the outside still looks whole. Dale hit the wall at around 160 miles per hour. The right front corner of his car took most of the impact. The car didn't flip. It didn't burst into flames. There was no giant explosion of metal. It stayed mostly in one piece, almost sitting there as if nothing terrible had happened. But inside that quiet moment, forces stronger than anyone could see tore through the cockpit. What fans didn't know was that a crash like this is like running into a brick wall without warning. The body has no time to brace, no time to protect itself. And when the stop is that sudden, even the strongest driver can't fight against it. For years, many people believed Sterling Marlin caused it. They replayed the video over and over, looking for someone to blame. They wanted a clear answer. They wanted a villain. It was easier than facing the truth that sometimes tragedy happens even when no one intends it, and even when everyone is doing their job as safely as they can. Sterling felt the weight of it instantly. As soon as the cars slowed, cameras pointed straight at him. He lifted his hands inside his car, showing he hadn't meant to do anything. It was a small gesture, but it came from a heart that suddenly felt heavy. He said later that the moment he touched Dale's car, even lightly, he felt a shock through his body. When he saw the crash happen, he felt something worse than fear, a deep fear that he had been part of something he never wanted. He had raced for years. He respected Dale. He admired what he had built, and the thought that he might have been connected to something so awful made his chest tighten. Reporters later said Sterling looked pale when he stepped out of the car, like the world around him had gone silent. Meanwhile, safety workers rushed to Dale's car. They expected to help him climb out, maybe guide him to the ambulance for a checkup. But when they reached him, their steps slowed. His head wasn't moving. His arms stayed still. His body didn't react to their voices. One of them noticed something strange about his seatbelt. It looked twisted in a way they didn't understand at first. A quiet message moved from one worker to another like a cold wind. "This looks bad." Fan heard it. No camera caught it, but the people closest to the car felt the truth sinking in. Something was terribly wrong. At the same time, the race had reached its end. Michael Waltrip crossed the finish line first. After 462 races without a major win, he had finally done it. Dale Jr. finished second. The moment should have been one of the greatest days the Earnhardt family ever had. A dream finish, a story for the ages. But Dale Jr. couldn't feel joy. He kept looking back, searching for his father's car, trying to see movement. He felt a tightness in his chest, an uneasiness he couldn't explain. He knew his father's driving better than anyone, and something about that crash didn't feel right. In Victory Lane, Michael Waltrip cried tears of happiness. He had waited so long for this moment. Cameras flashed. Crew members cheered. But behind the celebration, whispers began spreading. People were running toward the track instead of toward the winner. Reporters stopped smiling. Broadcasters lowered their voices. Something was happening, something serious. Michael didn't know yet. No one had told him, but the mood around the track had changed. He later said it was like the joy had suddenly leaked out of the air. Minutes passed. Slowly, the crash that looked small from the outside began to feel enormous. Dale still wasn't moving. Workers were now speaking into radios more urgently. Doctors were being called in. Crew members were pacing, whispering, praying. And Sterling Marlin stood by his car, eyes fixed on the wreckage, unable to breathe normally. He said those moments felt like the heaviest of his life. The kind of moments a person remembers forever. Moments that freeze in the mind and never fade. Because what the world didn't know yet was that NASCAR had just lost its greatest hero, Sterling Marlin's silent pain. Long before any official reports were released, Sterling Marlin already felt the weight of something that would change his life forever. The cameras captured what looked like a tiny, harmless bump between his car and Dale Earnhardt's. To anyone watching from the stands or on television, it was just another moment in a fast-moving race, barely noticeable in the chaos of engines, tires, and speed. But Sterling knew differently. He had seen the way Dale's car shifted, the split-second motion that led to the black No. 3 hitting the wall. In that instant, the entire world changed, and Sterling felt as if all of it had landed squarely on his shoulders. He returned to his garage quietly, moving through the pit area like a shadow. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Fans speculated. But Sterling didn't answer. He didn't defend himself. He didn't argue or point fingers. He simply sat alone, letting the silence wrap around him. The pit noises, the excited cheers, the roaring engines, all of it faded into the background. Inside, he was trapped in the replay of that moment, seeing it again and again in his mind. Every detail was etched clearly. The angle of the cars, the speed, the wall, and the terrifying final impact. Every time he thought of it, his chest tightened. Friends who reached out later said he seemed lost, almost invisible. When he spoke, his words were quiet, careful, and heavy. It felt like the world stopped, he told them. And it had, in a way. Time had fractured for Sterling, and nothing made sense. He could barely breathe. He could hardly think. His mind circled endlessly around one question. Could he have done something differently? Could a single action have prevented the unthinkable? The answers never came. But the questions stayed, gnawing at him day and night. When the official news finally broke, when the world learned that Dale Earnhardt had died, Sterling's heart shattered in ways he could never have imagined. The moment of tragedy became a moment of personal devastation. The grief of Dale's family, the shock of fans, the endless media coverage, it all landed on him. Yet, he did not fight. He did not argue. He did not try to explain. He disappeared into his own private silence, where the world's noise could not reach him. For months, he barely slept. Nights stretched endlessly, filled with visions of the crash and the sound of engines still screaming in his ears. He would wake suddenly, drenched in sweat, haunted by the moment he had witnessed, the moment he had been a part of. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the black car, the wall, and the fleeting connection between the two vehicles that had set everything into motion. His mind became a labyrinth of what-ifs, twisting and turning with no escape. Sterling replayed the footage countless times, searching for answers, trying to find some meaning in the chaos. He dissected every angle, every millisecond, every shadow and movement, but deep down, he already knew what he feared and hoped at the same time. He had not intended any harm. It had been a normal racing move, the kind every professional driver makes hundreds of times in their career. Yet knowing that didn't make the pain go away. Knowledge could not erase the images from his mind, nor could it soften the weight pressing down on him. The guilt was relentless. Letters and messages flooded in, some full of anger, some demanding explanations, some simply pointing blame. Sterling read them, every single one, feeling each one strike like a small hammer against his chest. He could not escape the sense that, somehow, he had played a role in taking away a legend. The words of strangers became a chorus he could not silence, echoing in his head even when he wanted nothing more than peace. Every why, every accusation, every moment of public scrutiny reminded him of what had happened, reminding him that the world would never forget what took place that day. And so, he stayed quiet. He retreated into himself. For years, he refused interviews. For decades, he declined to speak publicly about the crash. He let silence be his shield, protecting not just himself, but the family of Dale Earnhardt, and perhaps even the sport he loved so much. He carried the burden privately, alone, inside a mind constantly replaying the tragedy, feeling every emotion, every loss, every pang of guilt, as though it were happening in real time again and again, until now. After more than 20 years, at the age of 67, Sterling Marlin finally decided to speak, to break the silence that had defined his life since that day, to confront the memories that had shadowed him for decades. And when he does, he doesn't speak to defend himself. He doesn't speak to explain away tragedy. He speaks to honor a friend, a competitor, a legend, Dale Earnhardt, whose death changed NASCAR forever, and whose memory still resonates in every corner of the sport. The truth that finally came out. For years after that fateful day at Daytona, NASCAR worked tirelessly to understand what had happened. Investigators examined every detail: the cars, the track, the equipment, and even the driver's movements in the moments leading up to the crash. Data from the cars, witness reports, and expert opinions were collected and analyzed repeatedly. Slowly, the truth began to emerge. What everyone feared, what fans whispered about, what Sterling Marlin had carried in silence for years, finally became clear. The investigations confirmed something crucial. Sterling Marlin did not cause Dale Earnhardt's death. The ruling left no room for doubt. It wasn't a case of recklessness, aggression, or intentional contact. It was an accident, a tragic collision of circumstance, timing, and force. The investigation revealed several chilling facts that few fans ever understood. First, Dale's seatbelt had torn during the impact. Something meant to protect him failed at the moment he needed it most. Second, he wasn't wearing the HANDS device, a safety tool designed to protect the neck and spine in high-speed crashes. At that time, many drivers considered it uncomfortable or restrictive, and Dale, like others, had chosen not to wear it. The sudden stop of the car created what experts call a basilar skull fracture, a catastrophic injury that strikes before the body has time to absorb the impact. It was precise, invisible, and deadly. In those split seconds, no one, not even a driver as skilled and strong as Dale Earnhardt, could survive that kind of force. Yet, despite the findings, Sterling remained silent. He didn't want to appear defensive. He didn't want the world to think he was trying to protect himself at the expense of a grieving family. And he didn't want to sound like he valued his own reputation more than Dale's life and legacy. For years, he carried that weight quietly, praying, reflecting, and hoping that one day people would understand. He replayed the crash in his mind endlessly, remembering every angle, every movement, every split-second decision. He kept thinking about the life that was lost, about the family devastated, about fans shocked and heartbroken. Decades passed. Sterling aged. Life continued. But that February day of 2001 never left him. Every conversation, every race, every quiet evening alone reminded him of the moment. He thought about Dale Earnhardt Sr., the man whose presence had dominated tracks across the nation. He thought about the courage it took to race at such speeds, about the risks every driver accepted every time they buckled in, and he thought about the unfair judgment that had been directed toward him, the whispers of blame, the questions from fans who didn't know the truth. Finally, at 67, Sterling decided it was time. He spoke openly for the first time, breaking a silence that had lasted more than 2 decades. He shared the burden he had carried, the guilt that had shadowed him every day, and the respect he held for Dale Earnhardt. He said he had lived with that moment every single day. He confessed that he prayed often for Dale's family, wishing he could somehow undo what had happened. He spoke of the regret he felt, not because he had caused the crash, but because someone he admired so deeply had lost his life. Sterling also shared something that fans had never heard before. He talked about Dale Earnhardt Sr., not just as a driver, but as a man, one of the toughest, most fearless individuals Sterling had ever known. A man who never backed down, never showed weakness, and never shied away from danger. Racing wasn't just a job for Dale. It was his passion, his identity, his life. Every time he got behind the wheel, he pushed himself and everyone around him to their limits, always striving for victory, always racing with honor, And Sterling said something that struck everyone listening. Dale didn't deserve what happened, but he lived the way he wanted. He raced the way he wanted. And he left this world doing what he loved most. Those words, simple yet powerful, captured both the tragedy and the beauty of Dale's life. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about understanding, about remembering the man who had given everything to the sport he loved, about honoring his legacy rather than focusing on the accident that ended it. For the first time, Sterling spoke with peace instead of guilt. The confession didn't erase the past, but it allowed him and the world to acknowledge the truth. The world finally listened. Fans who had wondered, doubted, and speculated could now see the facts. NASCAR's investigations confirmed the accident's cause. Sterling's honesty revealed his humanity, his grief, and his respect for a legend. And most importantly, it allowed Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s legacy to shine, undiminished by speculation or misunderstanding. Finally, after years of silence, the truth came out, not just the facts of the crash, but the human story behind it. Sterling Marlin survived the race with scars unseen, carrying pain that only he fully understood. And at last, the world could see the courage, heartbreak, and respect that defined both men. A legacy that never faded. After Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s passing, the world of NASCAR would never be the same. The crash at Daytona was more than just a tragic moment. It became a turning point, a wake-up call that shook everyone involved in the sport. For years, drivers had raced at incredible speeds, pushing limits without fully understanding the risks. But Dale's death forced everyone to face a harsh reality. Racing could be deadly, and safety could no longer be optional. NASCAR immediately began reviewing every rule, every piece of equipment, and every safety measure. The sport evolved almost overnight. The hands device, which Dale had chosen not to wear because he found it uncomfortable, became mandatory. This simple piece of equipment, designed to protect the neck and head during sudden stops, might have saved his life had it been in place that day. Beyond that, walls at tracks were reinforced with safer barriers that could absorb impact more effectively. Cars themselves were redesigned, with stronger frames and improved safety features to protect drivers from the kind of crash that had ended Dale's life. Each improvement was a silent tribute to him, a way for NASCAR to ensure that the risks were managed more carefully, and that drivers could race with a greater chance of survival. These changes were not just rules on paper, they saved lives. In the years that followed, countless drivers walked away from crashes that would have once been fatal. Some of them quietly admitted to reporters and fellow racers, "Dale saved us." It was a statement filled with respect and gratitude, a reminder that even in death, Dale's influence reached far beyond the racetrack. Every hands device worn, every reinforced barrier, every safer car that rolled onto a track carried a part of Dale's legacy. He became more than a champion. He became a symbol of protection, courage, and the lessons learned too late. Fans continued to honor him in ways both small and grand. His black, No. 3 Chevrolet remained more than just a car. It became a symbol of determination, heart, and unbreakable spirit. From tributes painted on walls to gatherings at Daytona each year, Dale's presence could still be felt decades after that tragic day. People spoke of his fearlessness, his leadership. For fans, the memory of Dale was not tied to a single crash or moment of loss. It was tied to the life he lived, the risks he embraced, and the inspiration he left behind. Sterling Marlin, who had carried the weight of that day on his shoulders, also found a way to reconnect with the sport. While he no longer competed at the very top levels, he continued to race in smaller events, shaking hands with fans, sharing stories of the tracks and passing on lessons he had learned alongside legends like Dale. Over time, the anger, speculation, and rumors surrounding him faded. People began to understand the truth. They realized that accidents happen, that intentions matter, and that Sterling had carried his grief with respect and humility, never seeking to excuse himself or diminish Dale's legacy. Today, when Sterling speaks of Dale, his voice carries reverence rather than fear, admiration instead of guilt, and pride instead of sorrow. He remembers the lessons Dale taught, the passion he showed, and the man he was behind the wheel and beyond. And while the crash remains a painful memory, the legacy that Dale left behind overshadows it. It's a legacy of courage, leadership, and resilience. It's the kind of legacy that shapes generations of drivers, inspires fans around the world, and reminds everyone that even in tragedy, the actions, choices, and life of one person can change an entire sport forever. Even now, when the roar of engines fills the track, when the black, no, 3 car speeds by, in tribute or memory, the spirit of Dale Earnhardt Sr. feels alive. His influence is undeniable, and it continues to guide NASCAR into safer, smarter, and more thoughtful racing. His life, and even his death, left a mark that cannot be erased. A mark that shaped not just drivers and fans, but the entire soul of the sport he loved so deeply. Dale Earnhardt's story is more than a moment of tragedy. It is a story of strength, passion, and a legacy that changed racing for every driver who came after him. And Sterling Marlin's truth reminds us that sometimes the people who carry the most pain are the ones who never meant to cause any. Now, after more than 20 years, his voice is finally free, his silence is finally over, and the truth, the real truth, is finally clear. Dale was a legend. Sterling was a racer caught in a terrible moment, and the world will never forget the day when everything changed. Thank you for watching this video till the end. If you want more true stories, more deep moments from the world of sports and history, and more emotional journeys like this one, like this video, subscribe to the channel and comment your thoughts below. Do you think Sterling carried this weight for too long? Your support helps us share more real stories that deserve to be heard.